I am 107 years old. When I say that number out loud, I don't feel proud. I just feel tired. Not tired of living, but tired from having watched too many people leave. Most of the people I once loved are gone. Most of the places I once called home are gone too. I've lived so long that my memories have started to weigh more than my body. People often ask me a familiar question: what's your secret to living so long? I'm sorry to say this, but I don't have one. I never did. I didn't follow a strict diet. I didn't live by any rule book. And I don't believe I did anything better than anyone else. If I'm being honest, there are many people who deserve to live longer than I did. But there are 6 things that kept me here. Not because they made my life more beautiful, but because in my worst moments, they kept me from letting go of life. The first one isn't hope, it's attitude. I grew up in Europe at a time when people were hunted simply because of their names. I lived through the Nazi era. I saw my mother taken to a concentration camp and never come back. I lost the man I loved when I was still very young. Later, I had to bury my first child. To be honest, there was nothing positive about those years. There were times when I truly felt life was harsh and cruel to me. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. Some days, waking up alone felt like an effort. If I had sat there counting everything I had lost, I wouldn't have survived. I knew that very clearly. So I started doing something that sounds foolish. I counted what I had once had. I remember that I once had a mother who held my hand when I was little, that I had once been loved, that I had once sat down to a quiet dinner with my parents. Those memories didn't make the pain disappear, but they kept me from collapsing to the floor and never getting back up. I don't call that positive thinking. I call it refusing to let despair win too early. The second thing is learning to love yourself, even when no one ever taught you how. After the war, I moved to England and later to the United States. I became a kindergarten teacher. People often think teachers teach children letters and numbers. I didn't. The most important thing I taught my students was to stand in front of a mirror and say, "I matter." I've seen too many adults break inside simply because they never believed they deserved to be here. When a child doesn't know how to love themselves, the world is very quick to teach them the opposite. Teaching children to love themselves was also how I learned to do it again. When you've lost almost everything, if you don't see yourself as something worth protecting, you disappear and you lose yourself faster than you realize. The third thing is enjoying life while you still can, not waiting for everything to be perfect. I often tell young people they are younger than they think, not to comfort them. At my age, comfort doesn't mean much anymore. I say it because I've seen too many people spend their youth waiting. They wait until they have enough money. They wait until their career is stable. They wait until they buy a house. They wait until retirement. That list is long. So long that even if you wrote it all down, You might not finish it before you're in the ground. When I was young, I thought I knew where I was going. I thought I had time. I thought if I didn't live today, I could live tomorrow. I didn't know that some tomorrows never come. And I certainly didn't know I would live this long. If someone had told me at 20 that I'd live past 100, I would have laughed. I was thinking about next week, next month, not an entire century. I worked. I earned a living. I saved money. I didn't live recklessly. But I learned something fairly early. If you wait for life to give you permission to feel okay, you may be waiting a very long time. I remember one afternoon after work, I was exhausted. I didn't have much money. My work wasn't finished. On my way home, I passed a small bakery. The smell of fresh bread drifted all the way onto the sidewalk. I stopped, just stood there. I told myself I shouldn't buy anything. I thought about tomorrow. I thought about money. I came up with many very reasonable reasons. Then I walked in. I bought a small loaf of bread, nothing special. I brought it home, sliced it, and ate it slowly. I was alone. There was nothing to celebrate, but I remember that feeling clearly. For the first time in a long while, I didn't wait for life to allow me to feel at ease. If I hadn't bought that bread, my life would have gone on the same way. Nothing dramatic would have changed, but I know one thing for sure. I would have added one more memory of waiting. At this age, I find it almost funny. I lived through war, loss, and things my younger self could never have imagined. And yet there were days I nearly denied myself a simple loaf of bread because I was afraid of tomorrow. Life never tells you in advance whether it will be long or short. I am living proof of that. And because we don't know, I learned to live a little while I still could. Not only when everything was perfect. The fourth thing is self-respect in love. I was married and I was divorced. It was not a good marriage. I stayed in a relationship where respect came and went. There were days I was spoken to in ways I never should have accepted. There were days I realized that staying meant teaching my children to accept conflict as a normal part of love. One day, I told my husband to go to hell. People often laugh when I say that. But it wasn't arrogance. It was a boundary. It was the moment I stood up and said that my life was not a place for someone else's bitterness. Divorce was not my greatest failure. Staying in a marriage that slowly wore me down would have been. The fifth thing is never stopping movement and never abandoning your passions. At my age, I still knit every day, 1 hour. No more. Some days I knit the stitches wrong. Some days I forget how many stitches I've made. That's old age, and that's okay, because it reminds me that I'm still here. I also take a walk every day. Not far, not fast, just enough to feel that I'm moving. When both the body and the mind stop moving, life begins to shrink very quickly. Knitting and walking didn't extend my lifespan. They extended my presence in each day. The sixth thing is choosing love instead of hate. I have more than enough reasons to hate. If anyone in this world had the right to hate, it would be me. But I learned early on that hatred is very heavy. Carrying it doesn't punish the people who caused my pain. It only shortens what little time I have left. I do not forgive evil. I simply refuse to let it live with me until the end of my life. Choosing love doesn't make the past better. It only makes the present more peaceful. Now, at 107, I don't wake up every morning feeling victorious. I wake up because I'm still here. I make tea. I sit down. I let another day pass. If you're listening to me expecting a formula, I'm sorry. I don't have one. I only have one uncomfortable truth. I didn't live long because I knew how to live the right way. I lived long because on my worst days, I didn't quit. Some things, if you wait until you're 60, 70, or 80 to understand, you won't have enough time left to begin again. I'm not saying this to change you. I'm saying it because this is the only thing I can still do with the time I have left. I am 107 years old, and I am still here. Not because I am stronger than others, but because even now, I continue to choose to live. Do you know anyone who's over 100 years old? If you do, ask them what their secret is and see if it sounds anything like mine. And if what I shared today touched you in any way, please pass it on to someone you care about. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so this story can reach more people who might need to hear it.